Hey everybody, thank y'all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate each and every one of you for showing up for the show tonight. Thank y'all. Tonight, my special guest for the show is Daryl Denton, and I'm really looking to doing this show tonight. I'm having him on to share his encounter. He's shared it before on the show, and I'm going to have him to share it again tonight. And he's got some recent updates or whatever as far as he's done some investigations with Martin Groves at the LBL. So we're going to talk about that tonight. As you all know, I'm just going to give y'all a few updates real quick. I'm going to be a speaker this year. Cryptid Paranormal Dogman Conference in Paris, Tennessee, that is away from the land between the lakes. There's several speakers there, and there's going to be speakers and several panelists. There's going to also be it's going to be a great show. I mean, if y'all went to for those of you who are watching right now and listening right now to this live, then you know, like if you were there at the conference last year, it was an amazing conference. But Josh is doing the second annual Dogman Cryptid Conference this year also, and there's a whole great lineup of a new guest or whatever. There's a few new ones, and then of course some of the ones that were there last year. Because it was such a great conference last year, it has come in high demand. People want him to do another one, and so I'm really looking forward to part two this year. I won't be a panelist; I'll be a speaker at that conference, and it's in Fort Worth, Texas, at I think it's called White Settlement. I'll have to look that up, or go on Josh Turner's page, or send him a friend request. You can go on his page, and you will see that he shared the link for that. And it's on Eventbrite too. It's the second annual Dogman Cryptid Conference. It's going to be a great conference. If it's anything like last year, it's going to be amazing. Everybody last year had a great time, and that was my first time attending a conference. So this will be my very first time actually um, speaking. Last year I was a panelist, so when I was a panelist last year, there were several different people on stage with me. Before I bring Daryl on camera, before he comes on, I'm going to go ahead and greet everybody in the chat right now. Marquetta, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you, Suge. Thank you for showing up. Sugar Britches, as always. Thank you for how you doing. Appreciate you for showing up tonight. I'm just going to speak to all y'all. And then for you that are out moderating now, like for those of you who are out there moderating, please, y'all, make sure that y'all let people know as they come in. Y'all greet them as they come in, because once we get ready to get started with the show, I won't be able to kind of keep continuously greeting people as they come in. So y'all greet them, and then let them know, all y'all know, like whenever we get ready for questions in the chat, make sure that the questions are in all caps, because it's easier to notice those questions when they pop up. Joe Classic, I think it's Classic, or if it's not, I might have said it wrong. But Joe, thank you for showing up tonight. Jennifer Mangrum, thank you for showing up tonight. I appreciate you. Y'all make sure y'all share this live in the groups that y'all are in and on Facebook, or share it with anybody who y'all want to come and join this show tonight. Jojo, thank you for showing up tonight. I really appreciate your support. Um, Let me see who all is down here. Just want to make sure I speak to all y'all like who are here right now, because the show starts. I try to make sure I pay attention to the guests and not go in there and try to speak to everybody in the chat. Richard Cox, thank you. I appreciate you for showing up tonight. Make sure, like I said, y'all put y'all's questions in all caps tonight. And then, like I've said it already, but I won't be able to keep continuously saying that. I try not to cut the guest off while they're talking on the show. So y'all that are moderators, y'all make sure y'all let people know as they come in. You see them asking questions, put the questions all cap. Y'all greet them, all that good stuff. Brown Dwarf, thank you for showing up. I know you follow me on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. I appreciate you. Thank you for showing up tonight. Share this on your Instagram also. I appreciate y'all. Orgasmatron, thank you. Thank you for showing up tonight. I appreciate you. I try to make sure that I add y'all in as guests, like not as guests, but I try to make sure that I call all y'all out the show, because I appreciate y'all support. And y'all let me know too, because y'all that are viewers and subscribers, y'all are also a part of the show as well. I'd like to make sure that I acknowledge each and every one of you because you deserve acknowledgement. I don't even know how to say this on W. Lifus. I don't know how you say that. That's a new person to the show that I've never seen on the show before. But thank each and every one of you. I'm gonna get Daryl to come on in a few minutes. I've interviewed him on the show before, but I wanted to have him back again tonight. Lori Barnes, thank you for showing up tonight. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Lori. Appreciate you. JM, thank you for showing up tonight. Y'all are in for a great show. Thank you for showing up. So without further ado, Daryl, you can come on camera with us right now, and if you would give us a brief bio of yourself and tell us how you got into cryptids and your cryptid encounters.
Thanks, B. Appreciate you having me on. We've been friends so long, it's always good to be on with you, and I appreciate you inviting me. I'm honored to be here. Um, I got started basically by just being a deer hunter in a tree stand when I had my first encounter. That's how I got started, and that was in November of 1992. And that was my first encounter that completely changed my life and definitely scared me more than I knew I could be scared. So that fear lived with me for a long time, and probably still would if I hadn't had some other positive encounters. So that's pretty much how I got started in it. I don't think I would say I never did believe in Bigfoot, forest people, Sasquatch, whatever anybody wants to call them, but that was definitely the life changing point of my life when I first had my encounter. I thought if they existed, they lived out in the far west, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, that area. But found out they didn't. They lived in Tennessee also.
Okay. Now, that being said, before you had your encounter, did you already? You said your first encounter was in a deer stand, and I haven't even asked you what that was with first. But before you had that first encounter in that deer stand, did you already believe or know about Dogman and Bigfoot and other cryptids?
I didn't know about Dogman, I don't think. I didn't hear anything about Dogman until my best friend, Martin Groves, had mentioned it to me a few years later. Um, I did know. I believe there could have been a Bigfoot, but I didn't think they lived in my area. If they were real, I never expected to encounter one. So it was definitely life changing. It changed my whole perspective. It's hard to wrap your mind around something like that. Being in the woods, you grow up believing there's not a such thing at that time, as I called them, as monsters, and I found out that they're not all monsters, but it was definitely the most scared I think I've ever been was my first encounter. But I know you and I've talked about this before, Billy, over the years. So um, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So basically, what I want to know from you is, are you so that first encounter that you had in the deer stand? Can you break that down and go into it in detail? Tell us everything that comes to mind. Tell us like what was happening at that time.
Sure.
What did you see?
Yeah.
What was the environment like? Did everything go silent? Break it down and go into it in great detail.
Okay. Be glad to do that. A lot of people's heard this story before. This is my first encounter. It was November 6th of 1992. Um, every year, me and three of my friends took my camper. I had a camper I pulled by my truck, and they followed us behind in their truck. We all had four wheelers, and they had them in the truck. And we would go to my grandfather's, which was about 90 miles from where I lived in Cannon County, Tennessee, and we would pull the camper up next to his barn, and we would set up camp, and he had electricity at the barn. We'd plug that up, and where all of our lights and everything in the camper would work. And we would be there that whole week of opening day of black powder, or what we call it muzzleloader season, in Tennessee. It would last a week, and We would always be up there that opening week because it was a real good place to hunt. My grandfather had a large farm and it was real rural. My grandfather at that time lived by himself, and my grandmother was living, but she lived in town in an apartment. And we would hunt that whole week, and we would camp out, grill out, have a good time. We all had spots we went to. We had some stands that were built from the years before, and we would carry climbing stands, which you can carry on your back and go into the woods and put around a tree and climb up it and hunt from a tree if you prefer to do that. So it pretty much started. We set up camp the day before season opened. Um, and my grandfather, I went up to his house and he and I were talking, and my grandfather was very close to me. At that time, he was 92 years old, but he was in tremendous shape and health. And most people thought he was a lot younger because he looked it and acted it. But I asked him, I said, Granddad, where would be the best place to go to get a trophy deer? Because I want one on a big rack to hang on my wall, which that's what we call a large buck deer with large antlers. And I was standing on his back porch and he pointed out over the hills and he said, You see that third hill there? And I said, Yes. And he said, That's where I would go because nobody ever goes back in there. And he said, You and I have been there before. That's my old home place. And the old house I grew up in there, it's fallen in now. And you can still see part of the chimney and the tin roof. But I would go to that hollow and hunt in that area because there's nobody ever goes in there. I mean, this is miles away from other homes, and there's lots of farms, but it's a great distance in between homes or where other people live. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So my other friends had already set out to their deer area that they hunted in. Either they were hunting a wooden stand that we'd already built years before, or they were carrying a climbing stand like I was. And I walked on over there, walked through his backyard, and it went into a big sage field that was about 200 yards wide between there and the wood line. And you had to go through a gate before you went into the sage field, and you lifted up a latch and went through into the sage field. And I walked about 200 yards across to the barbed wire fence area that went into the woods. And my grandfather kept cattle in that area, cows, and climbed over the barbed wire fence and walked on up the real steep hill. These hollows and hills are very steep. And I climbed the first hill, went over that, and went to the bottom, and there was an old barbed wire fence there that I'd stepped across. There had been no cattle in there for years, and went over the second hill and on down to the third hill. And when I got to the bottom of the third hill, like my grandfather had told me, there was a creek there, and it was probably 10 foot, 12 foot wide, 10 foot probably in the most areas, but it ran all year round. And there was an old grist mill that was there years and years ago. And my grandfather was born in 1900, so a lot of things had changed at that time frame. But he told me, he said, you'll see the place, you'll look over to the left down there, and you'll see the old home place. And I could barely see it. It was growed up, but there was a clearing there on the other side of the creek. And I pretty much walked around before I crossed the creek and found a tree that I thought my stand would be good on. And I took the stand down, and you have two little wing nuts on these stands, and you pull a blade around it, and you tighten the wing nut back and put it on the tree, on the climbing part, and also on the stand that you set it in. And I found a tree that looked good, and I did that. And I climbed up the tree, and I had a little saw that I carried with me that unfolded, and I cut off a few limbs and made a real good spot where I'd be ready for in the morning and where I could see good. I had a real good view from there, and it was on a real steep incline, probably about 45 degrees. It was kind of overlooking the creek and over the front part of that field there. And then I came back down and I crossed the creek and went on the other side and just kind of did some scouting to see if any deer had been in that area. And I could see lots of tracks and even some rubs where a buck deer will rub a tree with its antlers to mark its territory. And I walked down, and right on the other side of that creek, right on top of it, there's a little trail that was like a game trail where deer and other animals had been coming down on the creek bank. And I found a limb pretty close to that, a tree. And as I walked in that day, I had a drag rag, which you put around your boot, and it has scent on it, and it keeps the human scent. It has like a doe and estrus scent on the rag, and you hang that in the tree, and it helps draw deer in and cover up human scent. So I found a tree limb and reached up. I had to jump up to grab it. It was probably 8 to 10 foot off the ground, and I grabbed it in and put the rag on it and let it go, and it went back up. And so I crossed the creek and went on back and climbed over the hills and the hollows and went back to my grandfather's house and pretty much went to the campsite with my friends at the camper, and we grilled out and had a big time that night. And I went back to the house and told my granddad, "Wake me up when you get up," and because it's about a 45-minute walk over there, maybe an hour. And I knew in the dark it would be a little more than that possibly because I didn't know that area. I'd hunted there all my life, but not that far in. Um, so the next morning, we had a good time that night, and I went to sleep. And my grandfather come down, knocked on the camper that next morning about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and he said, "My grandfather never called me by my name. He called me boy. He always called me that." He said, "Boy, time to get up." And I said, "Okay." So I got up and got my gear together and headed back behind his house, and went through the gate and went across the field. And when I got to the barbed wire fence, I climbed up on top of it, crossed it, and I started walking up the first hill. And I thought I'd heard something to the left, but I wasn't sure. So I shined my flashlight over there and didn't see anything. And by the time I crossed the second hill, I heard it again, but it sounded like a person walking. It was like a man walking, but it was to the far left of me. And I stopped again and shined the light, didn't see anything. And I started thinking, is somebody else hunting in here? Because my grandfather didn't allow anybody to hunt on his property except me and my friends. And not many people lived around that area anyway. There wasn't a lot of hunters. But so I went on down across the second hill, and when I started to go down the bottom of the third hill, I heard it again up on top of the second hill, and it sounded like it was walk and stop when I did, and I kept looking up that way and shining my light, never seen anything. So I got down the bottom of that hill right next to the creek edge and followed it around and found my stand. And I was a little bit nervous because I was thinking what could be in here because I knew there wasn't cattle in there, but something was walking in the woods and it sounded like a person actually, but I didn't really know what it was. I got to my stand and put it on you put these stand, you have little straps on the climbing part you put on your boots. And then you climb up the tree and pull the setting part behind you until you get to where you're going. And I got up. It takes a good 15 or 20 minutes to get up there with the climbing stand. I got set real good and always kick back a little bit to make sure the cleats on the stand dig into the tree where you're stationary, where it won't move. I remember doing that, and I got set up, and I had my lunch with me. I hung it up on a limb I'd cut off to the right, and I had some binoculars, and I had a little pack I had around my waist that had my extra loads in it with my black powder horn and my blasting caps that you put on the end of the muzzle of your muzzle loader. And my gun was already loaded. I already had the cap on it. And I got set up, and I have a little bar in front of that stand that I had. And you pull it up, and it kind of covers a little bit below the neck, all the way down past your feet. It's like a camo thing that falls out of it. It covers it up real well.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wore this blackout under my eyes because a lot of times the sun would hit you, and a deer or an animal can spot you by the glare. And I got all set up, and I was just waiting. It was dark. Real quiet, wasn't any noise. I was still listening to the left, and I didn't hear anything else to the left, but I still felt kind of funny, like what that could have been, somebody walking like that. But I was a little leery there might be another hunter in there. I knew it wasn't any of my partners, my guys, because I knew where they went. So we all went in different areas. And I waited around to a little bit before daylight, and it was just daylight enough that where you could actually see a little bit of the surrounding areas. You could see the trees, but it wasn't completely daylight, and it was a foggy morning. The creek had fog rising off of it. And I sat there and waited, and as it started to get light enough to where you could really see, I could hear animals moving, regular animals in the woods, squirrels and stuff running and that type of thing. And just waited for a little bit, and then I guess I don't know exactly what time it was. It was probably a little before 8. There was a huge cane thicket to the left of me. And if you don't know what cane is, it's this big green cane that grows on the side of creek banks and river banks. And there was a little ravine in between me and that. And I'm up about 25 feet in this tree. I'm on about a 45-degree angle. So I'm looking over the creek almost into that field that was there. It wasn't actually a field. It was kind of an opening in the woods that had some grass in it. There was a lot of acorns that year that had come off the trees. The deer had been in there eating that, but the cane field on my left went all down that bank a good ways. I couldn't see the end of it, but it was real tall, maybe 12, 15 foot tall. And all of a sudden to the left, I seen one deer came out over in that area somewhere and walked into the creek and went up on the other side to the game trail. And then 2 more followed it, and they walked down the game trail right down across in front of me and started just walking around like deer do. You know, they're milling around in the leaves and eating acorns and just like deer normally do when they're trying to find something to eat when they're in the woods like that. I've watched deer do that many a time. And I watched those deer probably. They walked around 15 or 20 minutes, and I just kept watching them. And usually, when you have a deer like that, these deer were what they call doe, which are female deer. They don't have antlers, and they were walking around too. One of them was to the right of the bigger deer. The front deer was bigger, probably the mother of those 2 deer. They were probably but and one was to the left, and I watched them, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the front deer, its ears stood up, and when I was watching the deer the whole time, when its ears stood up, and it kind of looked toward the cane area, the cane field area on the side of that creek bank, and then the other deer stopped, and their ears went up, and they were all looking in that direction, and they were real still. They weren't moving. The female deer then stuck her head up like she was trying to smell something, and she took her right foot and kind of pawed at the ground a few times. And I kept watching her. I'm thinking, well, there's a buck that's about to come out of these cane thicket over here, a big buck, and that's what they're doing. And then all of a sudden, the female deer, the bigger one, made a real loud blowing noise like deer do. It's a real loud, like it almost sounds like somebody sneezing in a way, but it's real loud. And when she made that noise, she staggered one more time to the left, and then they turned to the right and went back across in front of me, all 3 of them running as fast as they could. Like somebody had shot at them. And deer don't normally do that unless something really spooks them or they're frightened by something, and it took off running down to the right of me till they ran out of sight. Well, I'm immediately thinking, well, here comes the trophy buck over here out of this cane thicket, and I'm just going to sit here because that's what they've run from. And I sat there another probably 5 minutes or so, and then I start seeing the cane to my left. The middle of it was moving. This is 10 or 12 foot tall cane. It's real thick. You can't see inside of it. It's so bunched together. But it started moving. And I thought, wow, this must be a big deer to make this cane move like this. And it was moving all the way through it. And I watched it move all the way through it. And right at the end, it got closer to the edge next to the stream. Out steps this creature. And I'm just like, what am I seeing here? It was almost like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I kept staring at it and looking at it. And I thought, what is that? I mean, it was like, I can't be seeing this. And it took one step and it leaped completely across the creek in one leap and landed on the other side of the creek bank, right on that game trail. And it was, by this time, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And it walked right down straight ahead of me on the game trail and walked and stopped for a second. It looked at me. And by this time, I was basically just frozen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought, what do I do here? You know, I have one shot with a 50 caliber muzzle loader. I had my hand on my gun. It was leaning against that bar in front of me that went around me. And I said, if I shoot this thing and it doesn't kill it, I'm done. Because one bullet I didn't feel would take this thing down. But it stared at me, and then it showed me its teeth, and that's when it really got my attention. And it wasn't fangs; it was just regular flat teeth. It just looked at me, gritted its teeth, looking right at me, and then it growled. And that growl that it let out, I can still feel right now. I actually have kind of get cold chills telling this story sometimes.
Real quick, Daryl, was that a Bigfoot that you saw during this first encounter, or was this Dogman?
Yeah, it was a Bigfoot, yeah. And
can you describe in great detail what you saw?
Yeah, it was solid black. You know, it was solid black. It didn't have anything but black on it. It was about 8 foot tall. And the reason why I know it was around 8 foot tall was because of the branch when I finished the story where I hung the drag rag. But it looked like it had black leather on the face. It was covered with hair. It was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It didn't look like any Bigfoot that I'd ever seen pictures of, you know, since then, until I found a picture of it. But after it growled at me, by that time I was literally scared to death. You know, I remember I couldn't hardly breathe. I was that scared. I didn't know I had fear in me like that. But I found out I did because I didn't know what this thing was going to do. I thought it was going to come across the creek and grab me out of the tree and get me. Mm-hmm. About that time, it walked to the right a little bit, and it reached up and grabbed that drag rag I hung in the tree. And that drag rag, I'm 6'5", that drag rag was about 8 foot up. And it grabbed a hold of it, it smelt of it, and then it just ripped the whole tree limb out of the tree. And this wasn't a massive limb. It was probably 3 or 4 inches round at the base of the tree, but it still took a lot of strength. It just ripped it out and threw it on the ground. And then it come right back to where it was at about 2 steps, looked right back at me again, and it looked like it was really mad. And I didn't know what to do at this time. I was thinking, do I shoot this thing? Do I run? Can I run? It was a terrifying encounter. And then it lets out this scream that I've never heard before again. And I've listened to many tapes and, you know, everything, including the Sierra Sounds with Mr. Ron Moorhead. I've never heard a scream like this thing made, and it echoed all down the hollow. And I thought, well, this is it. This thing's coming across the bank to get me. Go ahead, babe.
If you had to describe that scream, Daryl, how would you describe it? What did it sound like? And I'm not going to ask you to emulate it unless you can. But how would you describe that scream?
I've tried to imitate it before, but I can't do it. It was between.
Would you say a howl, scream, growl, howl, scream?
I would say it was between a loud, real deep scream with a growling part to it, but it also at the end it got real high pitched and it made such an echo down the hollow I was in. It was, I've never heard another scream like that. And this thing was so ugly looking. It was just, its mouth was kind of, I can't even explain it. Actually, after that happened, I found a picture of one that looked like that. But, by this time I was terrified. I thought, well, it's coming across the bank, and I remember having my hand on my gun. I had one of those old Iron Man watches I wore back then. I don't know if you remember those things, but we all wore them back in those days. This is back in the 90s, and they had a little indigo, and you could push a button on it for a timer and a timer set. And I remember reaching down and pushing the button on it, and it was 8:23 in the morning when I seen this thing. And I let it run until I didn't see it again. But after it let this scream out, I thought, well, I guess it's going to come across the bank and kill me because this thing is mad. It was upset at me for being there. And then all of a sudden it turned and went away. I watched its back go straight ahead. It walked away. It turned and looked at me one time. And it walked away into the hardwoods till I couldn't see it anymore. And when it did that, I had one thing in mind, and it would take 15 or 20 minutes to climb down with this climbing stand. And I just lowered the bar and jumped out of the tree stand. And I hit the leaves under me, and I slid all the way down into the creek. I had my gun over my head and landed in the creek and jumped up out of the creek on the creek bank there, went into a little ravine around the side of that hillside and ran as fast as I've ever run over the top of that hill. And that hill was steep, and when I got to the top, all the way up, I kept looking back. I didn't see it. Across that hill, and when I was just about to get about halfway up on the second hill, I looked back again on top of the first hill, and there it was standing there. And that just gave me more adrenaline, so I ran as fast as I could over that hill, keep looking back. I don't know if it was the same creature. It could have been another one, but it was one that looked just like it. And by the time I got to the top of the third hill, I was running so fast down that hill that there's that barbed wire fence I had to cross, the first fence. So I was running as fast as I could, looking back, and I just jumped that fence. And it was probably 6-7 foot tall fence, and I hung my left leg on it with my pants and ripped them all the way up to my knee and cut a big gash in it. I didn't even think about that. I was still running. And I ran all the way through that sage field, which was about 200 yards wide. And I got to my grandfather's gate that goes to his house. And I opened it up, and I kept looking back to see if I seen it. I didn't see anything. I put the latch on that gate, and then I ran as fast as I could onto his back porch, and opened the back door up and ran into his house and shut the door and locked it. And I was looking out the glass of the window, and I didn't see it anywhere. And I went to the right, which his back door went into his kitchen area, and I went to the right and went into the living area where he sat. And there was a big potbelly stove in the corner of the house there, the right corner, and it was going because it was kind of cool that morning. My granddad always burned wood, and I went over and sat down in the floor behind it, and I was so out of breath I couldn't catch my breath hardly, and I just sat there for a minute, and my granddad said, "Boy," he was sitting in his rocking chair in front of that potbelly stove, and he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" And I couldn't hardly talk. I was just so out of breath, and I had to wait a minute before I could tell him. I said, "Granddad, I seen a monster in the woods." And he said, "A monster?" And I said, "Yeah, it was a monster. I've never seen anything like that here." And he said, "What did it look like?" And I started telling him. I said, "It's this big, tall, black thing that looked the meanest looking thing I've ever seen. And I thought it was going to kill me." And he goes, "Well, what did it look like again?" And I told him. He goes, "Oh, you seen the wood booger." I said, "A wood booger? What is a wood booger?" I said, "I've never heard
Real
of
quick,
a wood
Daryl.
booger." Yeah.
Real quick, before you go any further, what you saw before you go any further, what you told your grandfather, can you go into detail of when it came out into the clearing where you could see it? Can you describe it in great detail? Describe its facial features, teeth if it was showing teeth. If you could see it fully, can you explain its height and what you estimate its weight to be? Did you smell anything? Go in great detail into that, and from that point, we'll move on from there. Then I
All
have some
right. Sounds
questions for
good,
you.
B. Uh, it was, I did not smell anything. No. Um, Never did. When it came out and into view where I could see it, and I actually, when I left you, I'd pushed my watch, and I'd had about, if my watch was correct, I may have hit it later, possibly. I'm not accurately sure about that, but I don't think I did. I watched this thing probably about 15 minutes from the time it came out to the time I watched it walk completely away. I'm thinking that it was probably somewhere between 600 to 800 pounds. It had huge legs, thighs, not legs. It was about 8 foot tall. It was real solid black hair. It was real thick hair, black. Um, the hands looked human like. They had hair on them. The face had hair all under the eyes, from the eyes down. Uh, the nose was not a real flat nose like an ape. It was flat, but not real flat like an ape. The teeth were square and they were yellow looking, stained
Mm-hmm.
looking, and the face from here up to top of the head didn't have a lot of hair on it, and it was like black leather is what it looked like, with wrinkles like in it. You could see like lines in it. I was fairly close to this thing because I was actually on this 45-degree angle on this hill, the tree straight up. I'm kind of looking over on it, and it knew where I was at, so it was probably what heard me going in there, and I judged the height on it because that branch was about 8 foot or a little higher off when the drag rag was hanging there. And its head was up to it when it grabbed that rag and smelt of it, because it just barely reached up and smelt of it. It was right next to it. Um, its eyes were black. They weren't red. They were just black eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The mouth was kind of contortion. It's hard to explain. The mouth was a little twisted to the right. Uh, it was just the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen Bigfoot since then. Well, forest people since then, and I've never seen one that looked like that again. But
I'm gonna take a question real quick, Daryl. Usually I wait to the end, but they got some pretty
that's
good
fine.
questions right now. I'm gonna take one. Double D wanted to know: did it have any sheen to its skin or skin color, or was it like a ashy, dry type color from whatever
No,
level of skin that you could see?
no, it didn't have any sheen that I could tell. The sun was on the back of it, not the front of it. But it looked just like. I guess I would say maybe a flat black. It wasn't glossy or anything. It looked like leather with like leather is when you see leather when it has like little lines in it. Is what it looked like. And I couldn't see every detail. I wasn't that close, but I could see some of the actual lines on the leather looking skin. Especially under its eyes, but and on its forehead. But it just was the strangest thing I'd ever seen at that time. I would have never dreamed that anything like that was in those woods. But it was the most frightening thing that I've ever experienced. Well, I've had some pretty frightening encounters since then, but I still think that may top it all. But your first
And you said
encounter
that
changes your whole
it was.
life. Just perspective. So go ahead, B.
It does absolutely. You said it was about 8 feet tall. Suge wants to know how wide would you estimate the shoulders to be, Daryl?
I've heard people talk about 6 foot, 8 foot wide. This was no 6 foot, 8 foot wide. Probably, I'm guessing 4 foot wide. It was a good width. It was It was the very bottom of the legs from the knees down seemed to be skinnier. It didn't look like they were real big, but from the thighs up, it was built. I mean, it was had a lot of bulk.
Now,
I would say probably about 4 foot wide from shoulder to shoulder.
during this whole time, you're in this it's a tree stand, but it's one of the climbing stands where you have to climb up it like how you would be rock climbing or something like that. And I know exactly what you're talking about. My ex-husband used to go hunting, and he sometimes would be in a tree stand, like a little tree house, and then sometimes he would be on the stand like you're talking about right now. And to me, I'm a woman, and I'm a scary person anyway. There's a lot of women out there that's not scary. They can go out there, they go hunting, camping, and fishing, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not doing none of that because what none of these things are out there. I'm not gonna do it. I ain't gonna do it. I'm that person, and I'm not trying to deflect y'all because I'm gonna go back to it, but I'm just telling y'all the type of person I am. I'm that person that I want to go on a cruise, but I won't go on a cruise because I'm stupid as hell, but I'm not gonna take a chance that cruise ship is gonna sink. I watched Titanic, and that movie scared me to the point I would not go on a cruise ship. Now, you could say, as far as being on a plane, that could be the same thing. You say, well, you might get on a plane, and that can also like crash. But I don't know why, but that doesn't bother me as much. And I know planes do crash; it just didn't happen that often. And I know ships probably don't sink that often. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation when there's terrifying things out there. I'm not going camping. There's a couple of encounters out there where people have been dragged out of their tents or out in this. What is that thing called? What is the thing they sleep in? I can't think of the name of it right now.
Sleeping bag you're talking about, or a tent?
Boom. Yes, absolutely not. You were wrapped up in a burrito and something like that, 8 to 12 feet tall, and drag you out of that shit. Absolutely not. I'm not even going to take any chances because I died because I didn't have to die because I didn't have to take my ass out there. I'm not going to do it because it's almost like suicide. And I'm not going to say, because I know some of y'all in the comments like, well, not all Bigfoot Dogmen are bad, and I understand that. I understand that 100%. I didn't have negative encounters as far as the dogman that I saw. So I can say, no, not all encounters are bad. But I don't want to take a chance and say, well, not all of them are bad, so I'm going to go out there. Because when you get out there, it's like upon you, oh, he doesn't bite. Person dog come up to you and they want to sniff and they want to play and stuff like that. He doesn't bite until he does. Because one day you might smell wrong. You might have the scent of another dog on you and they don't like that, or you got that fear on you because you scared of dogs, and then like that dog don't like that, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna bite your ass right now. So you got a lot of people, and Daryl, you know this too, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of people out there that are promoting. So y'all just listen right now, don't get in your feelings, don't get butt hurt. Everybody too sensitive nowadays, and I'm gonna speak on it real quick, and I'm gonna let Daryl get back into it, but I'm gonna address y'all right now because I need to. And y'all need it. Y'all need it. And Daryl knows it too. Daryl, do they need it every now and then? A moment of truth?
They need it all the time. Yeah, we appreciate everybody. So go ahead.
I'm gonna give it to y'all. I'm gonna give it to y'all right now. Sometimes y'all members, subscribers, and fans can get in y'all feelings to the point where y'all be like, oh my God, you took a gun out there and you tried to kill it. They're just friendly forest people. Okay. Mm-hmm. But what about the moment when it's not a friendly forest person? Take it into consideration the same way you would when it's a bear, a wolf, mountain lion, a coyote, or anything else. It is a wild animal until they give us a official announcement about the fact these creatures exist. Until they come out, first of all, you don't even need them to come out with that because a lot of people, not all people have negative encounters. So you can take other people's experiences, encounters, and kind of go with that. But what I'm saying is that you don't know what you're going to get. How would you feel? Do y'all remember, Daryl, you probably remember this. You remember that guy that used to go out there and he had befriended the brown bears and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, the one who got eat up finally, yeah.
Boom.
Tim somebody, I can't remember his last name.
Well, Daryl, you remember on a regular basis, he was out there recording and taking videos and pictures of these of these brown bears, and they like never did anything to them.
Yeah, it was on Kodiak Island. Timothy, I can't recall his last name. They finally ate him and his girlfriend up. So
that guy never went out there with weapons or anything like that. He went out there and he decided he wanted to get closer. So when y'all see shows and stuff like that, National Geographic, and they're recording bears and wolves and animals, understand now that guy, he actually wanted to be dropped off out there. And I think he was supposed to be dropped off out there for, I don't know how many days or a week or how long he was dropped out there for. He was dropped off and he went out there with no weapons. His girlfriend was out there with him too. And the team was supposed to come back. They had a set date when they were going to come back and pick them up. And that set date came. And when that set date came and they got back out there to pick the guy and his girlfriend, they was dead. They was ripped to shreds. And if y'all want to just, like, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but if y'all pull up videos, there's some videos on YouTube right now, like, and probably some of it is documentaries or what do you call it? Like, I forgot what you call it. But basically, they're showing when a bear or when animals attack, you never know what it's gonna cause. So basically, what I'm saying at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, take it out there. Forget about Bigfoot and Dogman, because for y'all that feel, they're peaceful, fun-loving animals. Okay, whatever you feel. But what about the other animals that's out there? And what about crazy ass people that might be out there in the woods too? Take it for your own protection. And you have it just in case, because just in case you're wrong, because you got Christians and you got anti-Christians. So when it comes to it, you got heaven and you got hell. And some people are like, hell is on earth. That hell doesn't really exist. But what if it really does? So if it really does, and then you die and you down there with all these demons in hell, then you're going to think back, because even though we are human beings, I seen a post on Facebook one time that said we are spiritual beings having a human experience, a physical experience, a flesh and blood experience, which means that you are a spirit first and you are flesh and blood, or you inhabit a body second. When you die, your spirit leaves your body. And when your spirit leaves your body, it continues to go on and it continues to exist. So wherever it goes, whether it continues to walk that, if it goes on to a heavenly realm, if you believe that. Yes, JNMBPA, reenactment. I couldn't think of the word. Yes, reenactment. I love those kind of shows. Haunting, Paranormal Witness. I love that kind of stuff, because some of those shows are really scary and scarier than the movies that they do a lot of the times to try to portray those reenactments. But what I want to say is this: have common sense, y'all. Have common sense. And I'm going to talk to y'all right now like I'm y'all's mama, best friend, sister, and all that. I'm going to talk to y'all with some common sense. Have common sense. Don't take your ass out there without no protection. Because at the end of the day, even my grandma back in the day took a walking stick when she went walking early in the morning, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Take a damn walking stick, and that's not going to help you with Bigfoot and Dogman. But I'm going to tell you right now, you got bears out there, at least take some damn bear spray. Take a satellite, satellite camera?
Beacon. A beacon. Take your satellite personal beacon.
Don't just, this damn net. Don't just go out and think you just going to go out there, and you might go out there with the best intention. You've been out there, you've been hiking, camping all these years, all your life, hunting, all that. You ain't ever seen nothing. But there's rare occasions when stuff does happen. So be prepared and think for the worst. I prepare for the worst all the time. And I'm OCD, so maybe that's part of me. But y'all need to think like that too, because when you go out there, before you even go out camping, don't just go out there and just disappear because you decide you want to go out there and have a kumbaya moment with nature and the tree. Great. I love it. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. Oh my God. Yes. Love it. But it's not going to help you when you out there in your sleeping bag at night and then you hear some shit walking around. And y'all know the difference between something walking on all fours and 2 feet. And I'm not trying to cut Daryl off, and I'll go right back into all I'm telling y'all is have common sense. Because the same way you think that there's not anything that's going to hurt you, there are still other natural predators that's out there. And also understand for you that think that there's nothing that's going to hurt you just because the ones on your property who you have either, and y'all, I mess up on the words all the time. Daryl, what do you call it when habituated? For those of you who've habituated these Dogman and Bigfoot because you take food out there to them and gift them and stuff like that, understand that sometimes there's people who do that actually go out there, and when they gift them and they habituate them and stuff like that, when you stop doing that, then sometimes there's problems. Now you can't go because now you're in the hospital, you sick, whatever the problem, whatever, you just don't feel like going out there, whatever it is, you go, you done stop feeding them, you done start gifting them. Now what you got to deal with, because they coming to your house. That's why people tell you don't feed the bears. Why is that, Daryl? Why they tell you don't feed the bears? I'm talking too much. Why they tell you don't feed the bears, Daryl?
Because you run out of food, they're going to eat you.
And if they come close to your house and you've been feeding them, then you have made it to where they're going to frequent your home. They're feeling comfortable enough. Matter of fact, y'all watch, this is a show that used to come on Animal Planet. I can't remember the name of it right now. If y'all watched that show before, I can't remember the name of it. I might have to Google it after the fact and put it in the description. But there was a show that came on before where there's people who actually bonded with these animals and they loved them, and all their friends and family was telling them, be careful, don't just go out there half-heartedly, half-cocked, and go out there. One day these things is going to kill you. There was like one show on Animal Planet. It wasn't Paranormal Witness. I can't think of the name of it right now. But y'all Google it and look it up. But there was a show on there where several people had these different animals in their house, like exotic animals. Somebody had raised a hyena, chimpanzee, hyena. There was one with this older white lady. She frequently fed the brown or black bears that came on her property. She would actually go out there on her front porch amongst them, and sometimes off her front porch out there in the yard amongst them and feed them, to the point where her family was like, they're gonna kill her one day. And one day they hadn't heard from her in a while. They pulled up her house. That woman was dead out there on her front porch, and the bears had been feeding on her. So have common sense. Y'all need to take common sense and take that, because some of y'all, and I'm not gonna say this and say it in a malice way, like I feel like, okay, yeah, y'all deserve to die. But some of y'all, like on the scary movie, the ones who hear scary ass noise and go outside and go investigate, you asked for that. You asked for that. I mean, I'm not like that. And when they show y'all on these movies, the black person is the first person to get killed, hell no, that ain't real. That's fiction right there, because a black person, like, you can, on these movies, they'll be like I can be right now, Daryl's a white person. Daryl, go out there and investigate that noise. All right, I'll be right back. Hell no. You want to tell a black person, like, you watch your mind right now. Hell no, I'm not doing that. You go out there. We're not doing that. So I'm telling you right now, Daryl was at the conference last year, Josh's conference. I think Daryl, a few other people, Martin, and a few other people had talked about going out there that night to go out and investigate. Nick Valenti, Jody Cook had mentioned. I said, y'all, you asked me about going. I'm black. I'm not going out there. Listen, if y'all want to go out there 3 o'clock in the evening, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening before it get dark, I'll go. But I'm not camping out in no tent out there with y'all at night. I'm not even gonna do an RV, because I know they know how to. LBL, they open them. Daryl, did they not open them RV doors?
They're supposed to kill the complete family in '82. Tore the door off. Yeah.
See what? They tore the door off?
Came to the back glass first. The story is they came to the glass and pulled the front door off. I don't know. That's what I've been told. So.
Absolutely. I'm not taking no chance like that. Now, you got to think about it. Safe on the inside. That's a little box. When you're inside of your vehicle, you're inside of a little box. You think that these things cannot rip your door apart? I do feel like, being a Christian, and I might be wrong, but being a Christian, I feel like there's certain barriers and there's certain veils. There's certain guidelines and boundaries that they have to respect. I'm not saying this is the case all the time. I don't know, because we're still trying to figure out things with these creatures. But when it comes down to it, I feel like they can get in homes. I do know that they have gotten in people's homes. I do know that they have gotten in people's vehicles. I know that they have flipped people's vehicles over before, that's been driving on the highway, that have actually, there's some different things. So use your best judgment when it comes to it. Be safe. I mean, think of them like any other animal. And you also need to think, even if you're looking at it like just your friendly far as being, understand At the end of the day, when I explain my first Dogman experience, you're looking at a damn werewolf or something that looks like a werewolf. And you're going to tell me you're going to go out there with no weapon to protect yourself? You're going to tell me something that's 8, 9, 10 feet tall? That's not even normal to not be afraid of something like that. That's not normal to not be afraid of something like that. It's bigger, it's taller than a bear. And it has different abilities and capabilities and qualities that regular natural animals don't have, that mind speak. Infrasound. Daryl was just talking to y'all about this. I'm gonna let Daryl go back into it because I know I done went in this, but I just
No,
wanted
you're
to
fine,
paint a
B.
well, Daryl, I just wanted them to understand, like, while they're listening to you and listen to this encounter and any encounter they listen to, have common sense and understand, because a lot of people like to ask too, why didn't you get a good picture? You can't get no good picture on those stuff like that unless you already got your camera already going before you get out there. You don't know when they're going to show up, number one. Number two, a lot of the times when you don't even realize that they're there, they're already there. When you don't see them, why do you not see them? Because sometimes they're in the trees too. Just like Daryl's up there in the tree stand, sometimes they already up there in that tree before Daryl or anybody else ever got to that tree stand. So think about that. Daryl's up there in that tree stand. What about the time when Daryl's sitting at a tree stand? And now I'm being dramatic. I'm just trying to get extra for y'all right now. I'm trying to, because at the end of the day, Daryl's sitting in that tree stand, and now all of a sudden he feels something dripping down on his head. It's saliva dripping. I ain't got time for all that. Daryl, keep going. I ain't gonna cut you off again. I'm gonna write
Oh,
stuff
you
down.
fine, B. You do what you got to do. You're fine. I appreciate it. I think I was in my grandfather's house when he asked me what it looked like, and he told me it was a wood booger. And I said, "What is a wood booger?" And he said, "Well, they've been around here all my life." He said, "I've seen 4 of them in my lifetime. I'll be working in the field, and I'll look up and I'll see one watching me work." He said they've never harmed me, and I do hear them a lot in the woods. And I said, "Well, why didn't you ever tell me about these things?" And he said, "Well, you grew up here on the farm, and you've hunted and camped here, and spent the night in a hayloft with your friends and all that type of stuff. I didn't want you not to have fun and be yourself because I didn't feel like they would harm you." And I said, "Well, if I'd have known there was one of those things out there, I would have never been out there." And he said, "You remember your grandma used to tell you at night, y'all get in the house because the booger man's going to get you." Well, the booger man is the wood booger, as they called it. So, uh, funny thing though, I asked him, I said, "You've known about these all these years?" He said, "Yeah, they come to my grandfather had a big old log hen house to the left of his house, and it had been there for years. He had a lot of chickens in there. And he said in the wintertime, they get hungry. They'll come up here and go in the hen house and take 2 or 3 chickens and won't take them all, just some. And they'll leave a little pile of rocks and sticks like they're paying for it." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, they've done it for many years." He said, "They've never tried to harm me." He said, "You probably interrupted them following the deer or interrupted their hunt, and they're very territorial. You were in their area." He said, "I didn't think about them being in there." And he said, "You don't need to be scared of them. I think you'll be all right." And I'm still getting up, looking out the windows and everything else. And I never seen it again, and I've never been back there again. I guess my stand is still on the tree. Martin Groves has tried to get me to go up there, me and him, and go back in there and see if that's my stand's still there. But we haven't accomplished that yet. Me and him and Barton Nunley have talked about that a few times. But my grandfather's gone now. Somebody owns that farm. But it was definitely a life-changing experience. I didn't go in the woods I had nightmares for weeks. I was sitting in the house that day when my friends came back to the camper. I'd been in the house with my grandfather trying to calm down and get my nerves back together. And I went out to talk to them. They had killed a deer and they had it in a tree. They were skinning it out. And they were, I was talking. They said, "Did you do any good?" And I said, "No, I didn't do any good." And I said, "You guys, we've been hunting up here for 4 or 5 years. Have y'all ever seen anything in the woods here, like any type of creature?" And I remember they looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Maybe like a Bigfoot type creature." And they kind of laughed. And one of Scott said, "I think you had too much to drink last night." And I said, "Well, I don't think I drank anything last night, but okay." I didn't mention anything else about it. They pretty much hunted the rest of the week, and I stayed in the house with my grandfather. I was done with my hunting, so I had nightmares for weeks, months, and years about that thing. And I started going to the library back home when I got home after the hunting trip, and I finally found a picture that looked like what I seen, and it was in a book, and there was like 10 different pictures in there, different type Bigfoot creatures. And the number 2 one said number 2 wood booger, and it looked just like what I'd seen except for the eyes. The eyes were red in this picture, and the ones I seen didn't have red eyes; they were black eyes. But that was my first encounter and my experience, and I didn't hunt for about 7 years. What little hunting I did in my truck. I'd pull up in a field and with a friend and just wait for the deer to come out on the edge at places we had permission to hunt at. And I didn't go in the woods. I didn't care anything about deer hunting anymore, knowing those things were out there. So that was my very first encounter. And it took me a lot of years to get over it, and I still think about it. I don't think I'd ever got over it if it hadn't been for my second encounter. But that really changed my whole perspective of these creatures. Looking back on it now, I don't think it was trying to kill me, because if it wanted to kill me, it could have. I was there in the tree. There was no way for me to get down, and it could have got me if it wanted to. So it just wanted to run me out of its area, and it wanted to make sure I was scared to death, which I was, and I've never been back there since. It's been over 30 years. So go ahead, B.
Daryl, how many times have you over the years had a sighting of Bigfoot? We're gonna go into Dogman in a few minutes, but how many Bigfoot encounters or sightings have you had?
Well, I've never really counted them, but I've had quite a few. My second encounter, I wasn't hunting, I was fishing. So I didn't care to go around where these things were at. You know, I didn't care to go back in the woods in case there were any like that in there. I was more worried about several of them instead of one of them. But I know now from what I've learned that there's usually a clan or a family of them of at least 5 or 7. So I'm pretty sure the second one I seen on the hill when I was running was probably another one, because the other one had went a different direction. But I don't think they're all evil. I don't think anything is all evil. Dogman may be, but I don't know that for sure. But you know, if you want me to go into my second one that changed my mind about it, I'll be glad to do that, B. My second encounter was somewhere in.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just telling you. Yeah, go ahead, because it's interesting. I want you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Yeah. My second encounter was
okay. So go.
Go ahead, B.
Go ahead. No, I was telling you. Go ahead.
All right. Second encounter was not actually. I wasn't in the woods hunting. I was fishing at a place that I'd fished at for quite a few years. I started fishing there in my high school years with some friends, and that encounter was a long way from there. It was a place I fished on the Cumberland River, the other side of Nashville. And I went in there for quite a few years to fish with my friends, and my friends didn't fish as much as I did anymore. And I'd go down there when I didn't go out of my boat, and I'd like to do some crappie or catfishing on the river. And there was an old sewer plant there, sewer water treatment plant, and you would pull down this long gravel road, and if you didn't know it was back there, you wouldn't know how to get to it. But my friend's father had worked there, and we'd pull down to the sewer plant, and we'd park behind it, and the employees would park down there, and there was only 4 or 5 employees that worked there. But we'd pull a car down there, and we'd go through a gate behind there that went into the woods back there. And these woods went for miles and miles down the Cumberland River, and it's real growed up and thick back in there. And you'd go down that, you'd open that gate, and you'd go through an area of trees, and you would get on a game trail where deer and stuff followed regularly, and you'd walk down that game trail. It's about a 200-yard walk, probably, maybe a little less or a little more, back to a spot that we would fish from the riverbank. And this particular spot had a creek running next to it that run into the river, and there was a sandbar that went all the way out from the edge of this into about the middle of the river when the water was at level, at the regular level. And you could walk out on that sandbar and pull your fish in, because if you didn't do that, you would get hung up on the branches and the roots that were sticking out of the bank. This particular day, I'd went in and I carried a bucket of minnows, and I always bought somewhere around 3 or 4 or 5 dozen. And I'd set all my gear up, and I had a 5-gallon bucket that I carried my stuff in when I went in there. And I turned the bucket over and sat on it while I was fishing. And I'd been fishing for a while this particular day, and I think it was maybe the second fish I'd caught. I'd walked down off the bank on that sandbar, and I came up with the fish and put it on the stringer, and I went back and sat down on the bucket, and I reached over to get my minnow bucket, and my minnow bucket was gone. I said, okay, my minnow bucket's gone. I got up and looked around the tree, and I looked around everywhere, couldn't find my minnow bucket. I looked around in front and made sure it hadn't fallen in the river somehow or the creek, and it hadn't. I couldn't find the bucket, so I immediately started thinking, well, this is strange. How do you lose a styrofoam minnow bucket in the middle of the woods and nobody around? And there was a lot of real thick, what they call kudzu, kind of like a real thick ivy-looking stuff to the left of me. And it went all the way down that riverbank, and it was a trail that went through there, but you had to really get down almost on your knees to get through there. And it was a game trail where the deer had walked through there regularly. I went down that just a little ways, maybe 10 foot, and I couldn't get through there, and I didn't see my minnow bucket, so I left. I thought, well, somebody has played a joke on me and took my minnow bucket.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, nobody knew to go in there, because I didn't know anybody that knew where that was at except a couple of my friends, and they didn't want to go that day. So I got my stuff, left, and went back to the car. And I was about a week later, I got another minnow bucket, went down there to go fish again, and pretty much the same thing. But this day, where the water was up high, it'd been raining, and that game trail stays real muddy. You can see tracks in it, like deer tracks or any other type track in it. And I was a little closer up on the bank because the water was up high. I couldn't see the sandbar, and I put all my lines out, and I was fishing, and I caught a fish, and I went down there and got the fish off just from the bank. I couldn't go on the sandbar, and it was kind of a stormy day. It had been raining, and the wind was blowing a little bit. And after I caught a fish, I put it on the stringer, walked back to sit down the same place I was before. My minnow bucket was gone again. Well, by this time, I'm thinking either somebody lives in here or one of my friends is playing a joke, because there's no way that minnow buckets just vanish. And it was windy this day, and it was starting to rain again. A storm was blowing in. I looked down the river to see if the bucket was floating or anything like the wind had blown it. Nope, it wasn't down there. So I didn't know what to think. I was kind of puzzled, like, who is taking my minnow buckets? So I left again, got all my gear and left. I didn't have any minnows to fish with. And it was about a week or two later, I went back, but this time I had made my mind up. Nobody was stealing my minnow bucket, so I taken about a 12 or 15-inch small rope or string, and I tied it on the metal handle of the bucket, and I tied it around the tree that I was sitting next to. So if somebody tried to get the bucket or something tried to get the bucket, it would have to untie it, and I would have time to see them.
Mm-hmm.
This day I'd been fishing for a while, and it was a good day. I was catching quite a bit of fish, and the water was back to regular level. I went out on the sandbar and reeled in a fish to keep it from getting tangled in all those roots sticking out of the bank. I came back up, put it on the stringer, went back up, set on my bucket, and right before I got to my bucket, I looked and I noticed that string was stretched from the tree all the way into those vines and the ivy, and the rope was tight, and I could see the bucket down that trail a little way. And I thought, well, what's something that's getting my bucket is over in this thick area. So I got down, and I had to bend over real low to get down in there to look, and I walked over next to the minnow bucket, and I could see all the water had been splashed out of it, and there was only one minnow in it. And I thought, well, that's strange. It was at least 3 dozen or more left in here. There's one minnow, so I started looking down in there, and I seen a track next to the bucket, and the track next to the bucket looked like a bare footprint. And I thought, well, who would be down here in early spring, February or March, barefooted, walking up and down the trail in the woods, and nobody knows this is down here anyway.
Was this in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's in Tennessee. Yeah, and
it's about what was the temperature like at that time?
It was in the 50s. 50s, 60s. It wasn't real cold or real hot. It was a mild day.
But too chilly to be in the woods barefoot.
Correct. Yeah, you wouldn't think anybody would be walking around barefoot at that time of year. When we were kids, we went barefooted when school got out. Until then, we didn't. So that's pretty much when we went barefooted. But anyway, I looked down that trail a little ways, and I had to bend down, and I kind of went in there a good 15 or 20 foot. And I looked over, and to the left was a minnow bucket, empty. And over to the right, a little further way up, was a minnow bucket. And I grabbed both of those, and I thought, well, these are the minnow buckets that I lost a couple of weeks ago. And I bent over low and went back out to where my minnow bucket was, and I kept looking at that footprint. It wasn't a real large footprint. I never measured it. I didn't have anything with me to measure it, but it might have been 10 or 12 inches at the most. It looked like a person's footprint. So I grabbed my minnow bucket, and I came over next to the tree, and my fishing was over from that point. I acted like I was fishing, but I got over next to the tree, and I started thinking, well, this might be another one of them creatures. I don't want to be around this thing. So I got my stuff and left. And it stayed on my mind for the whole next week or so. I kept thinking, I want to go back down there if one of those creatures is there. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. So I went down there. It might have been a week later, maybe a little longer. It was on a weekend. I remember that. And this time I carried my shotgun with me. So I carried my shotgun with me with my fishing gear, and I went down there. And I set my minnow bucket where I always do. Didn't have a rope or a string on it. And I put my poles out, and I act like I was fishing, but I wasn't fishing. I was leaning against. My back was against the tree, sitting on this bucket with my shotgun on the other side of the tree. And I was just waiting. I was looking. I would act like I'd fish, and I'd look down that trail out of the corner of my eye, because I thought, if it's one of these creatures, I need to know about it. And I hope it's not like the last one. That was on my mind. And it was a good while. I don't know exactly how long, probably an hour, maybe even 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, I seen one. And it was a little one. It wasn't big. It was on the trail down there. And it would just lean over, and it had his hand on a tree. And it would lean over to the left and kind of just like this and peek at me, and then it would go back real quick. And after I first seen it, I knew what it was, but it looked nothing like the first one I'd ever seen. It didn't look nothing like that. And I thought, oh gosh. Go ahead.
I want to tell you something real quick, Daryl. I wanted to tell them, they're talking about the different conferences. Hillbilly Holler had mentioned and asked a question earlier, and I'm not going to cut Daryl off again. But Hillbilly Holler had said that it would be interesting if there was a conference in Tennessee. There, we did have the Cryptid conference in Tennessee with Josh last year on Dogman Cryptid conference, but there are several others. A couple of people, Gatlinburg Cryptid, Gatlinburg. I don't know if there's a Bigfoot conference that's in July. I
Yeah.
know in actually this month, next weekend, is going to be the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. Texas Front Porch is going to be there, and several others are going to be there as well. That is next weekend. I'll be at that. I'm not going to be a speaker at that one. I think that's, and I might be wrong because there's different ones. So when you look up Alabama Bigfoot Conference and you look up the different speakers and stuff like that, make sure you look up. There's more than one, and they're both at the Bigfoot conference, and probably different ones for Tennessee. You got the Smoky Mountains, you got the Gatlinburg Bigfoot conference. You got different ones. So the particular Alabama Bigfoot conference that I'll be at next week will be the one that's with Texas Front Porch there. I'm googling it as he's talking right now, but y'all gonna have to look it up because it is next weekend, and I'm trying to get all the details real quick. But we'll go into that later. I have a question because I know, like, when it comes to these different shows and stuff that we do, people don't understand that a lot of the time when it comes to dogman encounters or Bigfoot encounters, some people got frequent Bigfoot activity on their property, and some people have straight up dogman activity on their property, and then some people. So I'm gonna put that together. So some people have seen both. Some people are sensitive, and you tell me how you feel about this, Daryl. But some people are sensitive to the point that I feel like whether they have marked us
Oh, I
or
believe that 100%. I definitely believe that. I think
so you think
people
that they
are marked.
and do you feel like certain people have certain spiritual gifts to where that they are able to see these things on or off
Definitely.
camera where other people can't see
Yeah,
them?
I definitely believe that. I'll give you an example. Of course, talking about the conferences, we'll all be at the Gatlinburg conference July 23rd. And Bettina, you're supposed to be there with us, and Barton Nunley and Martin Groves and Letitia and a whole gang of us there. Be a great time. We'll have a booth there. And Blinds and Booze will have a booth there also. But I think that some people can't say it. I'll give you an example. Martin Nunley and is my best friend, him and Martin Groves. And the researching that I do now is mainly with those two people. And then I do some with Billy Howell back home in Tennessee at our old spot. But Martin and I go regularly to a certain area. And we were there in April, and we stayed in an area that supposedly nobody had
Hmm.
ever spent the night. Nobody had ever spent the night there. We were told by a friend of ours who took us there, and we had some really strange things going on there that night. But there was actually a Bigfoot to the left watching us around a tree, and Barton has never had a good encounter with a Bigfoot. I understand how he feels about him the way he does, and I respect that. But he has rebuked them at one time, and I even had my phone. I have an iPhone 14. I had the camera on this thing in the dark, and it has a square in my phone. And I was showing him, look in the square, Bart. It's right there. This thing was sticking its head out around a tree, peeking at us. And it was a good distance from us, but you could see it. And Bart couldn't see it. So, that the rebuking works. I know that. And, he like I said, he's never had a good experience. Now, Martin and I could see everything. Martin actually had even seen another creature that night. We had creatures all around us. It got pretty crazy there till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, I do believe
Wait a
that
minute,
also.
Daryl. Don't just Daryl hold that thought. Daryl, can do you mind? Can we take a like 4 or 5 minute break? When we come
Sure.
back, I want to pick up. When we come back, I want to because I need a bathroom break and stuff like that. But I want to pick up. Don't y'all leave because I got some good stuff for y'all, and I got some other things to share with y'all too in the chat. Because listen, when I do shows, like I'm a little bit different. I want to do stuff different. I want to add y'all in on it that's out there in the chat. Like I want to make y'all part of the show. So don't ever feel like I'm not that type of person. I'm not that podcaster where I'm not gonna. If you want to join in, y'all comment down in the chat at times when y'all want in and get in on the chat with us and ask questions. All in shows. Nobody ever wants to call in. I don't know if y'all shy or what. Cut your camera off. You ain't got to do all that. If you want to get in on it, get in on it. I want y'all on here. I want to do something different. I'm trying to make y'all that's out there in the chat. I'm trying to make y'all guests too. So I'm gonna take a 5-minute break. Me and Daryl gonna cut on camera for a minute. But real quick before I take this 5-minute break, what I want to say to y'all. Jennifer Appleton.
I love Jennifer. Jennifer is one of my closest friends too. She has Dogman and Bigfoot on her property. She is the admin.
I know. I got to talk to her because I want to talk to her some genealogy stuff, but I got to talk to her about her cryptid stuff too. Y'all don't understand. We're going to school y'all tonight. Like, Daryl is one of my best friends in the cryptid community. Daryl is one of my best friends. Barton, Nonnelly, Josh, love Letitia. Because when I keep my circle small, I keep it real small. It's like a small inner circle. And so y'all know, like, y'all see people doing their shows every week. Like, I'm going to just let y'all know right now, I'm a person that deals with depression and anxiety. And it's frequent enough that at times, like, when you see me disappear for a minute, sometimes, and Daryl knows this too, like, when you deal with the cryptid community or you deal with being a podcaster or a founder of a group and stuff like that, I don't know this for sure. I've heard Dark Water say it. I've heard D-Doll say it before, and Josh too. When it comes to doing shows and doing what we do, I feel and they feel like there's a certain spirit that is attached to this. There's a certain spirit that's attached to this. A certain spirit of negativity, infighting in groups, infighting amongst podcasters and stuff like that on Facebook and YouTube. And not only that, there is also other normal aspects that go into this where you start having shit that's happening to you in your home, whether it is Bigfoot or Dogman related and you're going out there gifting them or habituating them or whatever. That's not just all that it is. People don't realize. So that's why I call my group Crypto Normal Encounters of BMOS. Yes, I don't talk too much about the paranormal aspect. I was going to originally do a lot of paranormal shows in addition to this because people don't realize it's all intertwined together. And Daryl, when we come back from this break, Daryl can also kind of go into some stuff as to why he kind of somewhat pulled back from doing research because it is intertwined. There is normal aspects to this.
For sure.
There's things that we're going to... So we're going to take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, y'all stick around because like I told y'all right now, I may not be like every other podcaster. I might not have the fancies and like all that kind of stuff, but I don't care. At the end of the day, I'm going to get down to it because for me, this is more for entertainment purposes. This for me is for the purposes of also getting information, sharing, and people know what's going on out there, how to protect yourselves, and what is the real deal at the end of the day. I'm a Christian, but I also do check out other stuff too when it comes to different things. There's different books and different type of knowledge that you can get into, ancient knowledge when it comes to these cryptids, Bigfoot, Goat Man, and all this kind of stuff. When you see ancient Greek mythology, that's not mythology. Trolls under the bridge, that's not mythology. That's real. They're showing you stuff that's always been there when they show you stuff in movies like that movie Rampage. I don't care if it was a game back in the 80s or 90s, it was a game or whatever. They're showing you that this is something that's mutated, whether some of them are naturally created or whether some of them are created in labs and stuff like that. At the end of the day, understand, and this is another reason why I tell y'all when y'all go out into the woods, and after this we're going to take a break, but when I tell y'all go out into the woods, don't just go out there as half-cocked. I mean, because I want to ask y'all, for the ones that's out there listening right now that feel like that, what's wrong with you? Why would you go out there like that? I mean, I won't go out. So I don't want to ramble on too long. What I want to say is just that understand that you were not I'm a cryptid. Or I ain't seen no Bigfoot. I've seen Bigfoot, but on pictures. And then my ex-husband took pictures of it. He didn't see it. He didn't know what he was looking at. I did. I've seen Bigfoot several years. Darrell has seen Bigfoot and Dogman. Darrell's gonna be on more than just this show because tonight we're already at like an hour and 24 minutes. But we've covered his Bigfoot encounters tonight, and because we're already at an hour and 25 minutes, I want to bring him back so we can specifically talk about Dogman. Because when it comes down to it, sometimes these shows can get kind of long because it's chopped up into several different sections. It's not just Bigfoot. It's not just Dogman. It's not just orbs. It's not just aliens and paranormal. This is all wrapped in together. It is all
Yep.
intertwined. So we're gonna go into that. Daryl is 125. We're at an hour and 25 minutes. We're gonna take
All
a
right.
5 minute break, and when we come back, y'all get y'all's last questions in. I'm gonna bring Daryl back, and I promise. And I know y'all used to me saying that all the time. Get y'all questions ready. Put y'all questions in all caps. Come back. I'm gonna stick at 2 hours because we're hour 25 minutes. We're gonna take a 5 minute break now. But I want Daryl. What I want Daryl to do is I want him to come back. He's gonna pick back up on his Bigfoot encounters, and then I'm gonna ask him some questions. And y'all put y'all's comments down there in the chat too about what do you think that they are? Do you think that they're interdimensional? Do you think that they're demons? Are they Nephilim? Are they straight up an undiscovered North American ape? With that being said, y'all hold y'all's mule. We're gonna take a 5 minute break. Daryl, take a 5 minute break. We'll be right back, y'all. All right, y'all, I'm back. Daryl's back. And y'all get y'all's questions ready. We're the hour, 5 minutes in. Daryl, can you still hear me? Oh, his mic is muted. Hold on.
Can you hear
Daryl, can
me?
you still hear me okay? Yes, I can hear
I
you okay now.
yeah, hear you fine. Yes.
Um, so what I want to know from you right now, I'll listen to the comments is in because we're an hour minutes in. So understand this, like I said before, I will add y'all in on call-in shows. So for those of you who are in the chat a lot of times, like that have different Bigfoot, Dogman, or other cryptid encounters, and a lot of people don't realize I also it's called Crypto Normal because I wanted to cover cryptids and paranormal. Some stuff that is paranormal related has nothing to do with cryptids. Some people are just, I don't know, like at the end of the day, I feel like some people are just sensitive to different activity. Some people and think, okay, I'm a medium. Some people on a Christian aspect look at it as you have a gift of discernment of spirits. Because whatever is, as far as the occult is concerned, you have the occult and you have the Christian aspect. The occult aspect would be, or occult or new age aspect would be medium or seers or whatever you want to call it, um, clairvoyant. And then your Christian aspect of it, you would call that like discernment of spirits. So whatever you want to call it, from whatever genre or whatever walk of life that you're from, it does. These things do exist. Some people, for whatever reason, have the ability to see spirits. That is why a lot of the times when it comes to pictures or in real time, where two people can be together, three people, four people can be together, and there's a Bigfoot or dog man standing right there, and one or two people might see it and nobody else sees it. Sometimes when you're in groups and pictures are shared, some people can see everything that's in the picture and some people can't see anything at all. I think that there's a veil. I think that some people have a gift where they're able to see things that other people cannot see. I think that I do know for a fact that there are instances, and I'm going to let Daryl go into this because Daryl's got a lot of information to share, but he's got so much active. He's had so many different things to happen that some people you have to break their shows up into several different shows because it's not just one show. And when I say it's intertwined, it's intertwined. Daryl, can you tell people, because me and you have talked about this behind the scenes, but what was it that made you? Because I'm trying to bring, I don't want to be one of those podcasters that only talks about things like, did you smell anything? Did everything go silent? Because those are all basic questions, and we're trying to get an understanding of this from a much deeper level to get people to understand that there's other things going on with this. I don't want to just cover that because that is all the known things. We want to cover some things that also make people think too and realize that sometimes some of the things that you, as a researcher, eyewitness, investigator, or paranormal investigator, even because it comes together because in the alien or UFO phenomenon and the paranormal phenomenon, as far as this field is concerned, it is all entwined to the point where you got MUFON and you got the alien aspects and orbs and all that kind of stuff, lights in the sky, and then you got paranormal researchers and stuff like that. Why they have somewhat become open to opening up to cryptids, also because they are now also seeing why there's sometimes lights in the sky, why there are also UFO sightings and stuff like that sometimes when Bigfoot or Dogmen are around. There's things why people have paranormal activity. But can you go into it and tell people back?
Well, my personal thought. First of all, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm only talking about my own experiences. But you know, I've been, I don't know if I call it fortunate or marked or whatever you call it, but Martin Groves and I've talked about this so many times because I can go into an area, not all the time, but quite a bit of the time. I can feel in the area that there's Bigfoot in the area, and Martin will look at me and he'll go, You feel one, don't you? And I say, I think there was one on the hill there or close by to the left. Just for an example, we were at LBL when I said that. And it wasn't but just a second later we heard a tree knock, and then we heard a whistle, and it was all to the left. And, you know, Martin seems to have that same ability with Dogman, because I truly believe that he's a marked person on those things, because, you know, we have been in places together and actually witnessed the craziest thing I've ever seen, October of 2022. And I was even honored enough for him to put me in the second chapter of his latest book about the sighting he and I had there. But he has something about him when we were all in that spot back late March, early April, in that active area that supposedly nobody had stayed. It got real crazy that night. Martin got sick a couple times. I'm talking about really sick. I had to drive him down the road a ways to a restaurant area because he was that sick, and we did that 3 times. And I didn't want to leave Martin at the campfire by himself, but he kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. I still didn't want to do it, but I ended up doing it when I took him down there. But it's the first time I've ever witnessed Martin get so fearful. And I wouldn't say he was scared to death, but he was fearful because he knew these creatures were coming around us. And I'm talking about Dogman. I'm not talking about Bigfoot. That, you know, he actually went into the woods at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, man, where are you going? Don't go in there by yourself. And he went over to the edge of the woods while me and Barton were sitting next to the campfire and started speaking a few words. And I couldn't tell what he was saying, but he came back and he went and got in his truck and laid down. He was still sick. And I thought, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. And he and I had a conversation about it that next day, me and him and Barton. And he said, I just felt like they were coming in around me. They were going to close in on us. And I went and asked them basically not to do that. And it got real quiet after that. And we didn't hardly hear anything. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen him do anything like that. But you could hear you know, coyotes everywhere. You could hear howls behind us to the left of us. And I can't sit there and say they were a dog man, but it was not a regular howl. But it was something that they were starting to come in around us. And by whatever he did, they left. So that's all I can tell you. It was very hard to understand, but it worked. And you know, you don't ever see Martin get like that. I've never seen him do that before, and I've been with him many, many times in the middle of nowhere. And it takes a lot of courage to go in those areas and not be fearful. If you're not fearful, you got something wrong with you anyway. Go ahead, B.
Daryl, what happened out there like that night? How did it get started? And I need you to break that down in detail. Like when he got sick that night, were y'all hearing stuff first? Did y'all feel infrasound? What was going on right directly before?
Well, I never got infrasound myself. I call it you know, I call it zapped is what I call it. Barton and myself and Martin, we all three think it's some type of radiation because it can make you really sick. I did not get that night. We were sitting next to the campfire. Our friend that had brought us to that area, Mark Maycheck, who is a real close friend of Barton's, and he said nobody's ever spent the night here before. This would be the spot you want to be if you want to have plenty of action. And I said, okay, we'll stay. So we all agreed to stay there, and we cooked out that evening there. And he left about dark, Mark did. And it was just me, Barton, and Martin there. And just out of nowhere, Martin got so sick that he was, I mean, it was like he was doubled up. And he said, can you drive me down to that restroom down there? Drive my truck. And I said, yeah, get in. I'll take you down there. And I did. I took him down the good ways to where there was a campground restroom. And he went in there. He was really sick. I was real worried about him. And he got back in the vehicle. We went back to the camp and started sitting next to the fire and talking again like we were. And then it wasn't but a few minutes later, he got super sick again. He said, you're going to take me down to the restroom again. I took him. We went down. Anyway, we went down there. The third time we went down there was when it was really strange because I don't like leaving Barton by himself there. I wanted him to go with us, but he insisted he was fine. And we ran down there in his vehicle real quick. And while he was in the restroom, something was throwing rocks and sticks on top of the building. And I'd never seen it, but I could hear it back behind it. And it was like rocks. And we're in an area where there wasn't nobody around except one other set of campers, and they were over a good ways from us. And it was a family with 2 kids. I wanted to go tell them, y'all don't need to be here. But Martin didn't want me to. So I didn't tell him because we already had some weird stuff going on at the camp before we left, and with him being what I think was zapped by one of these creatures, and I think it was a dogman. I don't think it was a Bigfoot. I didn't see.
Was this during one of y'all's campouts? Was this during one of y'all's campouts out there?
Right. Yeah, we were in the LBL. Yes.
I know one time I called y'all while y'all was out there.
Yeah, that was the same time you called us, but it was the night. It was the night after that night. Yeah.
Daryl, War Criminal 7 wants to know, what does Daryl believe where do you believe these Bigfoot come from? That's a question to you.
Well, hello. War Criminal 7 is a good friend. He goes with us there all the time too. I've had a great time with War Criminal. Thank the world of it. He's a good friend of Barton and Martin and I's and Mark Maycheck, all of us. He's a great guy. But I've talked to him before about this, and people are going to think I'm crazy, but I truly think originally that this is going to be off. They're going to think I'm crazy, some people, but I think they came from another planet. I think they come from another planet.
You're not the only person to say that. You know what, Daryl? The first time I heard that, I was like, y'all reaching right now. Y'all doing too much. And you know what? But Daryl, I'm your friend, so I'm not judging you or nothing like that. But I'm also, I'm that person that even if I say you're doing too much at the same time, because I like to joke every now and then when I'm in a good mood. Even though I'll joke about it, at the same time, I'm still open-minded. I'm not closed-minded where I'm like, you know what? Absolutely not. I'm not like that. So I'll say that because I like to say that every now and then because I like to crack on my friends. I'm sorry, y'all. They're my friends in real life. So I will crack on them every now and then, be like, you know what? You're doing too much. You're reaching right now. But I have respect for it, and I trust the credibility of my friends. Like when it comes to Barton, Daryl, Krista is a paranormal researcher. Just because, and I'm trying to teach out Martin Groves. So Chris Kramer, when it comes down to it, I don't care. I'm not like everybody else, and I'm just gonna put y'all out there and let you right now, for those of you who are viewers to a channel, subscribers to a channel, members of a Facebook group, or fans. At the end of the day, y'all are fans. And so for the ones of you who are fans that are not eyewitnesses, that have not seen some of the stuff that we've seen, to understand it when it comes to the pictures and why they show up blurry. Understand, and I always say this, and I put this out there for every show, and it might sound redundant, but I don't care about that kind of stuff, because I'm the person that, just because I brought it up on a show before doesn't mean I'm not going to bring it up again, because now I've done it on 2 or 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 different shows. Y'all, some of y'all right now in this chat right now, I've never heard of y'all before, so some of y'all are new, so I will bring it up again because I wanted to show some of you who are in the chat right now that if you are in groups on Facebook, when it comes down to it and you see certain stuff, there's certain things that it should become at certain points to where it is not just only entertainment for you. But so for the ones who've not had Dogman Bigfoot experiences or encounters, some of y'all, and I was one too before I ever had my own Dogman encounter. A um I was a fan of it, and I was a person that was a fan of it to the point that I was subscribed to several different channels, and so it was for entertainment purposes until I finally had an encounter. And when I had an encounter and I started recording them from 2013 all the way to 2019 and 2020, at that point, it's not entertainment purposes anymore. It is, but it's not. Now it's also, let me find out what this is because they frequent me. Now, my parents don't live in that same house anymore, but they still, when they did live there, every weekend that I was there visiting them, they always showed up on a regular basis. Barton has dog man and Bigfoot activity on his property. Robin Haynes McCrae, they frequent her.
Robin's awesome too. Yeah, Robin's great.
Yep.
She's had lots of experiences. Her and Jennifer Appleton have both had alien experiences and abductions. So, a lot of this stuff sounds crazy to the normal people, but until you've experienced it and lived it, there's no way to explain it. What kind of creature, what creature out there has the ability that Bigfoot and probably Dogman. I've never seen a Bigfoot go interdimensional, but Martin Nunley has, and so Ron Moorhead says that through his quantum book, and he's a close friend too. These guys aren't making this up. They've witnessed it. They know it's there, and there's not normal creatures that have the abilities these things have. They can go interdimensional. They can mind read. They have special powers I know they can read what you're thinking. When you go into the woods, they know what your intent is. And
Cloak.
when you get out of the car, they know you're coming. It ain't like, how do they follow you home? I mean, they followed me home. I mean, how does that happen? 50 miles away, 30 miles. I've even heard people hundreds of miles. But I think we all have an ability to practice a mindset to do certain things that we haven't experienced because we haven't practiced it in so many years. I think a lot of our forefathers had more of those than we do now, but these things have an ability that's not like anything of this earth. You just don't go invisible and 2 or 3 foot stuff. So how do you explain it? Is it flesh and blood? I think there's a lot of these creatures that I know the Bigfoot, there's many different types. I've personally seen 3 different types. I'm only going by how they look. And I do think there is a forest people. Forest people is what I encountered on the river who became my friends. They never showed aggression. They were friendly. They did speak words, not sentences. I tried to communicate with them the best I could. Um, One of them, I even know one of them's name. Aleatha was that one's name. And I would say, my name is Daryl, and they would look at me. And it took a long time to get this to happen. I was with them 2.5, 3 years before they vanished, but they trusted me. When I came into the woods, they would get excited, and I gave them some whistles. They'd start blowing those whistles when they heard my voice. They were so excited, and there was many of them in there. I couldn't see them all, but I could hear them. I only seen 3 there, and 2 of them were smaller, maybe 5 foot tall, and one bigger one, maybe close to 7 foot. But I didn't see any of the full grown ones. I'm sure they were watching them because they didn't trust me at first, but. How do they have these abilities? And, we have questions all the time, Barton and Martin and I do, talking when we're out at the campfire. Are these things flesh and blood? Or are they some type of just interdimensional type being? I don't have those answers. I wish I did. I know they can do it. I've never witnessed one cloak or go interdimensional, but I know they can. Dogman, I think, has those abilities too. Portals, I think they do exist. Where do these things come from? I mean, how do they just show up and then they're just gone? I understand if they can go interdimensional, you would be able to see them. but they have a magnificent way to camouflage themselves. They can blend into tree leaves and trees, and you can look at it, and unless you're the photographer taking that picture, when you can see that creature and you put it in a group site or on a page, you can't see it, but they could see it. And I know that to be true because I've got very credible friends that's done this. So how do they come up with these abilities? It's not from anything from this world that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. I'm glad you said all that, and I agree with you 100%. And I know I want to go in and talk about this some more, but I don't want to do what I know because y'all know I can go forever. I'm gonna take y'all's questions tonight. It's about y'all. TCR 44 said, "Why didn't Martin want you to warn the other campers, Daryl?"
That's a good question. I asked him that a couple times, and I said, "What if they're in danger?" And he said, "I don't think they'll bother them." And I said, "Okay." And Martin knows so much about the Dogman from his inner being than I do. I've seen 2 Dogmen in my life, and one was with him, and it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. So uh, he has some kind of connection with them. I don't know how to explain that, and he can't even explain it, but he does. He has the connection with these things, these creatures. So he didn't feel like they were in harm, but I was worried about them. It was a couple with 2 children, and they had a tent right on the water. And I several times said, "I need to go tell those people they need to leave." He said, "No, it'll be okay. Don't do it." Okay, so I left it at that. But it was
Daryl
very. Go ahead. I'm
Barton's
sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna cut you off again, but I just want to say this real quick. Barton's in the chat right now. He said to clarify, it was Martin. He said it was Martin who got sick, not myself. I was standing there with nightmare ready for action.
That is exactly true, and I felt terrible leaving him there with nightmare. But it was Martin. It was not Barton at all. Barton didn't see anything that night. But I don't think Barton's ever seen anything at the LBL. I mean, he's been with us, and we've had some experiences a couple of months before that with orbs and lights and that type of stuff. But that was the first time that we had been there as together when Martin seen something. I did not see a Dogman. Martin did down next to the restroom I'd taken him to. I did see a Bigfoot, and I think 2 of them. I think a small one looking over a log. It was earlier that evening, but matter of fact, Mark Maycheck pointed that out before he left. But I don't know how some people can see them and some people can't. I know Barton gets frustrated because he researches real hard with us, and he wants to try nightmare out on one of them, which is his sword he carries, and I hope that thing works. I hope we never have to face anything where we have to use that, but you don't know what these creatures are capable of. I do not think they're friendly. In my opinion, I don't know everything about Dogman, but I don't feel like they're all friendly, and I think they would harm you. If all the stories out of the LBL are true in other areas of the country, not just the LBL, you've got to believe people. These are credible people talking about it. It's not just somebody making stories up. So, and if Martin Nunley told me it was snowing in July, I'd believe it. And the same way with Martin Groves. I know how honest and good friends they are. As far as that goes, Ron Moorhead believes a lot of things too. And in my opinion, he's the king of this entire cryptid, or whatever you want to call it, in humanoid or Bigfoot world. So, I mean, these people, they put their name out there. They talk about this stuff and tell the truth about it, and they're taking a chance with people thinking they're crazy. And fortunately, we live in a time now, not like Martin and I did back in '92 and '93, when we were just sitting around at a lunchroom table just discussing a little bit. I couldn't tell anybody because I was an elected official at that time. Martin was a deputy for the sheriff's department. I mean, I wouldn't have got elected again, and Martin would have probably lost his job to go tell stories like that. So thankful we're in a time now where at least you can discuss it on groups and on a podcast like you have, B. Go ahead, I've talked enough.
No, it's important because I think this stuff needs to be brought out. And I'm like, a lot of times, like y'all know, like we at 2 hours now. I'm gonna bring it back because I know y'all got questions. So whatever questions I didn't get to tonight, I'm gonna take this last question. But before I take this last question, Bama Bigfoot, if you still out there, please, Bama Bigfoot, please leave a comment below. Bama Bigfoot, please send me an email, Cloflow, CLOF as in Frank, Cloflow 2008 at live.com. Send me an email. I want to talk to you immediately because you always show up and you always been diehard. You've been there since I started the group back in 2020 when I was doing shows in the group. I want to talk to you immediately, Bama Bigfoot. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not negotiable.
Bama, Bama Bigfoot's a great guy. He is. I
Bama
enjoy
Bigfoot.
him.
I'm
So.
a Bama Bigfoot. Bama Bigfoot. If you still out there, are you gonna be at the Alabama Bigfoot conference next weekend? Because I'm gonna be there. And if you there, I need you to walk up to me and introduce yourself. Daryl Jonesstead
Yes,
Farm said, Daryl, do you think these things are drawn to certain people or is it coincidence?
that must be Anna Kay. She's a close friend. Her and Michelle Johns go to LBL
That's
with us too.
Jonesstead Farm. Jonesstead Farm
Yeah,
asked
the
you that.
Jonestead Farms is Anna
Oh,
Kay, and they go with us to the
okay.
LBL. Her and Kevin, her husband, great people, and Michelle Johns. And the question again, do I think what? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. It's a
Well,
lag between us. Go ahead.
okay, what was the question again that Anna or Jonestead Farms had asked?
Let me scroll back up. Do
Sorry
you
about
think
that.
these things are drawn? Do you think these things are drawn to certain people, or is it coincidence?
Both, both. I think people that see them regularly or they're drawn to them. I know I have certain times. I don't know how it makes a difference when, but certain times I can go into my areas that I used to research, and I see them. And it's like they don't mind me being there. Then other times I don't see them. And the coincidences are like your hunters or people in the woods that are hunting, or like Jonestead Farms and her friend Michelle Johns. They go camping in a tent by themselves, and they're something else. They've experienced quite a bit themselves, and I think I see Robbie McCray up there, one of my best friends there. She's awesome too. So
Yep.
yeah, I think
I
they
just
can for sure.
Another question from Daryl from Old Spirit Art. Daryl, do you think they know you? Do you think they know you know, and that makes you a target? I guess do
Yes,
you think they know you know about them?
yes, I do. I had an experience in the Shenandoah
What's
National Forest, and I had an experience in the Shenandoah National Forest in 2021 by myself. And I know they knew that who I was because I was scared to death. I was so far in, I don't know how far, 8 or 10 miles on a trail by myself. And I only went in because I wanted to make myself feel good about them again because they tried to attack my farm. And um, I I started talking these things. I was way back in there the second night I was there, and there was 5 of them, 3 to my left, 2 to my right, and a big one that came in from the front. And no, I couldn't see him perfectly, but I could see yellow eyes looking at me and silhouettes between the trees. And I really thought that they were going to get me and take me out. And I started talking to them. I said, "Look, I'm not here to harm you. I'm just in here camping tonight." And funny thing, I reached in my backpack and I'd forgotten my gun. It was in my car, my truck. And I said, "Oh no, here I am. I'm done." And the bigger one came in, and I didn't see it good, but I could hear it breaking limbs and branches coming. And when I mentioned the name, I said, "I'm here not to harm you. Do you know Aleatha?" And that was the one the only name I've known besides the Tobias on the river. And it made 2 loud noises like, huh, huh, like that. It got quiet and they all walked off and didn't bother me. So I don't know. And yes, I think they know I think they know people that have been around other ones. And they also know if you've been trying to harm others. I think they know that. They know your intent. And I didn't know what to do at that particular time. I was trying to think of anything to say to them, and I said that. And apparently, that one knew who that was, and they let me alone. So I may sound crazy, but it's
They
true.
know who you are. I don't know why. You don't sound crazy, and I want to address something real quick. Barton was talking, and they were talking about that shofar. And Daryl, I don't know if I've talked to you about this or if you ever watched the show that I had
Yeah.
Coonbo Baker on here on
Yeah.
the show.
Right.
Coonbo talked about that shofar, and Coonbo had one of those Jewish shofars, and he learned how to blow it in a way, whatever it was. It took him a few months to learn that, but he blew that shofar. He has a shofar right now in his possession that can actually call them in. I think he called it the shofar of God, the voice of God shofar, something like that. But Mary Fabian of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project, she is a good friend of Coonbo, and she was there at the time in Oklahoma when they blew that shofar. It was about 5 or 6 different researchers there, and more people were also there that same night when Coonbo blew that shofar for the first time, I think. And that was his first time blowing it. And all these researchers and eyewitnesses were there that night. When they blew that shofar, I think I can't remember how many different clans of Bigfoot came in, but there were several different clans that came in that night when Coonbo blew that shofar. And according to Kumbo and according to Mary Fabian, when they came in that night, they came as far as the wood line, and they stood there. They said they could hear them coming from miles away. It was that loud. They could hear several different
Yeah.
ones coming in from different directions, and they could hear them. And they said that because they didn't know what was going to happen when he blew that shofar that night, they all stood in their in the if you stand in the if you got a pickup truck or a car, whatever, they had the car and truck doors open so that they could keep it open so that just in case something happened, they didn't know what was going to happen. So that if they needed to peel out, they could peel out. And when those Bigfoot came in from different directions, from everywhere, when they got to that wood line, they stopped. And both Kumbo and Mary Fabian both said it was like they were waiting for something else to happen next. Whatever that was, they didn't know what it was, but whatever it was, that called them in. But it's like they were waiting for a sign, waiting for something to happen next for them to know to keep going forward. And after a while, when nothing else happened, they kind of finally retreated and went away. So I'm just telling y'all, I think said something about the shofar down there. Be careful when you do that kind of stuff. Dave, what's his name? He was on Monster 911 with Lance Hightower. He was the one who called in the dog man with a special coyote whistle that he had made. A special, I can't remember if he said it was a special distress call, rabbit call, or something like that, but it was for coyotes. And he actually made that to where every time you heard about this,
Yeah.
every Dave, what was his name? Dave
I can't
something.
recall his name. I've also Barton and Martin have talked about the shofar. I believe that story. I've heard that from several people. I know it's credible. So, um, Kumbo, I remember Kumbo on your show talking about that also. But those things are supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Robin Robin McCrae probably knows about that also. I know Barton knows about it. Uh, we've talked about it several times. Barton is super smart in the woods. He knows a lot about these things and other creatures too. So I don't know anybody I could be with researching that would be any better than Barton Nunley and Martin Groves. But I'm very honored to be their friend and be with them. And they know a lot. They know a whole lot. And it's good to have somebody that has that type of wisdom, especially some of the areas we go in. Uh, but go ahead, B. I'll let you talk.
Real quick, Sharon Guy said Sugay. She's speaking of Sugay, and she said I would love to have one, but not use it for calling in a cryptid. So Sugay, Sharon Guy, real quick, I just want to speak to you because I talked to Kubo on the phone behind the scenes about this. So he blew it at that get together they had out there in Oklahoma with those other researchers. But when they weren't with the researchers. Another time, he actually used that shofar at his home. So I'm just going to tell you this. So something, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. He blew it at his home one time, and I talked to him about this over dinner. Kumbo literally right now, I live in Huntsville, Alabama, close to Redstone Arsenal Base. And Redstone Arsenal Military Base is one of the major military bases here in the United States. It's not too far from the Space and Rocket Center. I can't remember. Warner von Braun was one of the founders or whatever that came here from Germany or whatever back in the day. But it's one of the major military bases here, as well as um, what is it? The nuclear plant, Browns Ferry nuclear plant is also here. So it's a lot of stuff military base here. Three dogmen were killed on the military base on Redstone Arsenal in 2020. My encounters that I had on my parents' property from 2013 to 2019, that's in Limestone County, Alabama. Kumbo literally lives like if I wanted to go to Kumbo right now, all I got to do is drive about 45 minutes to an hour and I can be at Kumbo's house. So Kumbo knows. And if y'all have ever frequented Kumbo, I think the show that he was like Bigfoot Outlaws Radio back in the day, and he and Bear would often talk about how Alabama was a hot spot. So Alabama's a hot spot for this, and some people have said that limestone has something to do with it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but whether it is or not, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I had Kumbo come to the property where I had all them dogman encounters. Like I know right now, y'all, I might do something special for y'all next week because I don't have a show set up for next week just yet. I might set up one, but I'm gonna do something special for y'all. I've done this again, done this before, but I did it when I was doing my shows on Facebook in the group. But if I do what I'm getting ready to tell y'all that I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna have to get a few other people to go. I'm not gonna go out there by myself, but I will go live. Y'all let me know. Leave a comment below if y'all want me to do it. I haven't done it in a minute, but let me know if y'all want me to go out live out there to that dogman property where I had all the encounters. I've seen them from 2013 to 2019, several, and there's not just one type. There's some that look like wolves or coyotes, gray and white or black, gray, white, and black look like more like a wolf or a husky type. You got ones that look have that German Shepherd or wolf type long elongated snout. There's ones that have shorter snouts that look like a Rottweiler or a pit bull, something like that, with a short snout, with that tapered waist, that upper body, the pecs, the abs, all of that, the huge thighs that are huge with the dog or hawk style legs. They're not all the same. Not all of them have the amber eyes like you've been told on different encounters. You heard Daryl talk to you a few minutes ago about Bigfoot. Not all the Bigfoot have red eyes. Not all of them have amber eyes. It's not the same. You put them in a box. You can't do that because just the same way you got different races of humans, black, white, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, all this different races, and you got different breeds of dogs. You got like huskies, Yorkies, pit bulls, German shepherds, Rottweilers. You got different things like that with different races, different breeds, different species, different eye colors, different coat colors, different hair colors. They come in the same qualities as humans and animals do. So you can't say every black person has coarse hair. Some black people have straight hair, just like some Caucasian people do. Some black people have amber eyes. Some black people have hazel eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. White people, not everybody has the same. Everybody comes in different shades, different hair colors, same as them. So you cannot say there's seven different types of dog man. Some of them have no, it doesn't work like that. And I'm just speaking because I've seen with my own eyes several different types. So just understand, don't put it in a box. Don't just say, well, that's not a dog man because a dog man I seen, and I'm telling y'all this as viewers, subscribers, members of the shows and groups. Understand, especially for y'all that ain't seen everything. And just because your encounter was a certain way, because your dog man or your Bigfoot on your property was peaceful and nice to you, that doesn't mean that that's everybody's experience. With that being said, we had 2 hours and 15 minutes in. I could go forever, and I'm sorry. Like y'all got so many questions. Daryl is gonna be back. Daryl is gonna co-host with me. I've got more than one co-host. Robert Haynes McCray. I respect her. She likes to take questions. She pays attention to the chat. Chris Kramer,
Robin's off.
that's one. She's awesome. She's one of my original. Chris Kramer is one of my original co-hosts. I respect and love him. Daryl Denton, I brought him back on. I had him on the show before, but I want to bring him back because I wanted to bring him back and go in depth. Tonight we mostly covered Bigfoot, and when it comes to shows, like it's so many different areas and arenas to go into when it comes to these things that I'm gonna have to chop it up and put it in categories because it's not just simple. Some stuff that we're talking about, we can already go for 2 hours and 15 minutes right now. I could probably go with Daryl right now for 4 or 5 hours because we've only covered Bigfoot. We haven't even gotten in depth with the paranormal. We haven't got into Dogman. We haven't got into the interdimensional. It is multifaceted. So understand, y'all, that when y'all listen to this stuff, it should at some point, for even those of you who have not had encounters, it should be at some point where it's beyond the point where it's just for entertainment purposes. It should get to the point where you are like, I'm speaking, you know what? I'm going to speak candidly with y'all right now. For those of you who are super holy, cover your ears. At some point, it should come to a point where some of y'all should be like, what the fuck is this shit? Daryl, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. I've had a lot of experiences, but I still have lots of questions of what they are, where they came from. I'm talking about Dogman. Bigfoot, where I think they came from, and I know there's different types. I think some of them are friendly. I think some of them would kill you. I don't think they're all alike, and they're just like people. And believe me, they are super intelligent. Dogman and Bigfoot, they have are more intelligent than some people, but they do know. They have unbelievable senses and eyesight. They can find you and see you before you'll never see them. So, old saying goes that I've said for years: you don't ever find them; they find you. And I really believe that. You just don't walk out and find one. I would never suggest anybody to go doing any type of researching by themselves because I think you put yourself in grave danger. I wouldn't suggest that. I've done it. I won't do it now, but I've done it for years, and I wouldn't do it anymore. But you don't know what you're going to encounter out there. There's other cryptids in the woods too. A lot of other cryptids in the woods. So I haven't experienced them, but I've heard from credible people. I know they're there. Things that you probably don't want to see, and I've never seen an alien personally, but I've got friends that've seen them and been abducted and everything else, and I know they're not telling the story. I tell the truth. I've seen evidence. So Jen Appleton, Robin McCrary is two of those. So I appreciate you having me on, B, and thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak on Barton's comment real quick. Barton said that shofars don't work on cryptids. He said they only work on demonic entities. We will cover that next time, y'all, because we had 2 hours and 18 minutes. I'm getting ready to go to Taco Bell. Shout out real quick to Angelo Jeffries, Godson, what it do? Suge, Sharon Guy, Robin McCray, Barton Nunley, Letitia Nunley, A6. Thank you for showing up tonight. Amber, thank you for showing up tonight. Miss Bama Bigfoot. Bama Bigfoot, I'm telling you right now, please, Bama Bigfoot, I don't care. Like, we didn't talk about this before. Bama Bigfoot, listen, reach out to me, CloFlo, CLOFLO 2008 at live.com immediately, right now. Hit me up, Bama Bigfoot. I'm not playing with you. Alabama, I don't want we need to talk. Old Spirit Art, thank you, Bart Hartman. As always, 100%. JoJo, thank you. Barton, who else I didn't call out? Everybody, whoever I didn't call out, leave y'all name below. Workcraft, and thank you, Jennifer Mangrum. Who else? I'm leaving somebody else. Davy Jones Locker. Thank you for showing up tonight. CR44. I don't want to miss nobody because I always feel bad when I miss people. Double D. I call War Criminal. Marquetta. Sharon Guy. Everybody else, like, I love y'all to death. I thank y'all. Tracy Cummings and Richard Cox. Miles, thank you for showing up. Orgasmatron, thank you for showing up tonight. Everybody, like, I'm going to have y'all back on. JNMBPA, thank you for showing up. All y'all, now, real quick, I'm going to let y'all go because I'm finna go to Taco Bell. I'm starving like Marvin. I'm going to tell y'all right now. If y'all want me to start having y'all on the show, y'all are members, y'all fans, subscribers, and all that good shit. I want to be on the show, then I need y'all to start. The group, the Facebook group is the same name as the channel, Crypto Encounters of B Moss. If y'all want to be on there, if y'all want to chime in, if I got a guest on the show, I'm not going to say it's always going to happen when I got a guest on the show, because sometimes the guest can have like encounters that go for days and can go on for a long time. I intended tonight to have Daryl on here for an hour, hour and a half, but it wasn't possible. Daryl's my friend, and so when we get in there, we chop it up. And not only that, Daryl has not even, he ain't even scratched the surface. We're not even finished. Robin McCrae is the exact same way. Robin McCrae,
Robin's awesome.
When you get him on the show, 4 or 5 shows.
Yeah, don't forget Kenny Busby. Kenny Busby's awesome. Him and Vicky Brown have a family they've been being friends with for years. They have names for them. So there's lots of credible people out there. Just because they don't have a big name, they're still very credible.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. Y'all had a good time doing this show with Daryl tonight. And Daryl knows I'm really shy, and y'all don't see that because y'all see me on the show. Y'all see me all amped up and interacting with y'all, but I'm going to let y'all go. But when I do these shows, like, I'm really shy. Like, but tonight, like, I felt like I'm just having a phone conversation with Daryl. This is not his last show because we're not finished. We're finished right now because it's 2 hours and 22 minutes, but we're not finished. I got more for him. And y'all are going to have more for him, too, because thank you, Daryl, for showing up. Daryl, wherever you at right now, thank you. Make sure wherever you at right now, the next time we do a show, Daryl, you at right now, because this is the first time that it's been great where there was no interference. So, Miss Bama Bigfoot, please reach out to me right now on Messenger because we need to talk.
Thank you, baby. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Daryl. Everybody, y'all, good night. Good night, Daryl. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Coming on tonight.
All right. Thank you. Bye.